Hello, everybody, and welcome to an episode of actually a Para Presents Rodeo special. I've had Mr. Mike Hruby on many a time. I don't even know. I think this is our fifth or sixth time, even at this
Something,
point.
something like
Always a good discussion, and of course, David Pickerel, CEO of Para. Um, and I think this is a really good matchup because I think that David, what we're doing over at Para, a lot of that digital gig space independent contractor work aligns with a lot of what Mike's doing. And for those of you that haven't seen our previous discussions, Mike and I have um, we dive in pretty deep, but there's Mike has a lot of experience with the legislation part and actually dealing with these people and actually the fight that goes on between like what it takes to actually get something done, which is something that frustrates me from as an outsider. I can only imagine what you've seen during the years, and we've talked about this a few times. But thank you both for joining me.
glad to be here, Steve. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and there's some unpacking to do, and I know we started talking a little bit backstage. That always throws me off a little, but we're good. So I guess the first thing I would like to hit on it because I feel like you and I agreed that one of the reasons it's not being discussed is because I now I'm pretty sure of it. There are false dates put out there all the time on when this Julie Sue thing is going to be locked and sealed. And so then people come to me on those dates and they're like, well, wasn't that done yesterday? So can you better unwrap what's going on with the whole Julie Sue thing being, going in for Secretary of Labor and why it's kind of taking a minute?
Are you referring to me?
Yeah, I'm actually talking to you, Dave. Yeah.
The um, the Julie Sue nomination takes a lot of impartial but informed people by surprise because she has a record with a lot of, I would call, a performance record in California of very dubious achievements. The loss of $32 billion of fraud, unwillingness to correct computer systems. I mean, these have no labor value at all. They're just her way of kind of tilting the playing table. Uh, her her pursuit of damage for independent contractors makes her a very challengeable uh, nominee. And I we put out a list of four women who would be, easier to pass, not any better in terms of their policies, but just, you know, alternatives. And we laughed because, no action at all. They're just going to stay with Julie Sue. What happens is the nominated candidate is escorted around the Senate with a guide and introduced to the key senators, both for kind of general leadership, official leadership, and committee seats for the committee that's going to handle it. In this case, it would be what health education in the Senate, health education, labor, and pensions, as I recall. And then there's a subcommittee below that will work often that will work on it on a nominee. So Julie Sue has had that. She's had that interview live on TV. It's an hour long, and it is a kind of a laughable effort to avoid saying anything and giving any answers. So it's eyewash, but it's official. And a lot of questions have been raised since that. I believe it was in May or April. It's been a while. A lot of questions were raised about other aspects that have not been brought to light about Sue's performance in office in California. And the drumbeat has gotten louder and more effective. And then they had scheduled a total Senate vote for a while when they thought they were going to have the votes and healthy senators voting. Feinstein is nearly out of commission. Fetterman has been out of commission for mental health reasons. God bless them both, but they haven't been able to vote, so they don't want to propose a vote and lose it like 48-49. So they can't they can't schedule a final vote without the healthy individuals. While this has been going on, there are the House of Representatives has brought to light some fraud and performance issues that a the powerful chairman of the House Education and Workforce Committee said we have to talk to this woman before you know in order to get answers, and the Senate has agreed to allow her the time to uh, to answer to answer questions from the House, even though the House is not on the nomination track. If you are still following me,
Hmm.
so now we've got a diversion. I think the Democrats are willing to go along with a little bit of House diversion because it's time for additional, medicinal help for the senators who are at large for health reasons. So there's some mutual interests there in a delay. Some candidates go 600 days. Well, that almost 2 years. So I think that there are a lot of moving parts in this nomination, and this is part of government. I'm not covering for it. If you think it's a nice, smooth, even process, you are in for a surprise. So happy writing. Um, it's fascinating in some ways because people all over our society, our writers, our colleagues in independent contracting are having an effect, and you wouldn't exactly expect that when you know I mean every bunch of working stiffs. That's all we are. That's all I am. I and we've got a professional mouthpiece on one side and we've got a business owner on the other, and you wouldn't expect individuals to play such a role. But when the going gets a little quicksandy, all of a sudden strange things happen, and it's to be enjoyed and savored, not to be condemned. So
So wait, let me maybe ask this though too, because maybe we need to backpedal just a little. So, what is the importance of the Julie Sue situation?
depends on your perspective. If you are a independent contractor, she is absolutely set against you having the freedom to be your own boss, to run your life, to pick and choose the work that you do, to work on a project basis for one or many or hundreds or one at a time clients. She doesn't want you to have that freedom. And I've been self-employed for 40 years working on projects, and I know that that is a wonderful freedom for individuals who are willing to accept the ups and the downs. David, you can chime in if you want to, but any responsible adult with some experience at something, even someone in their teens, loves that chance. They want to be busy. They want to have the experience of working in busy times, and they'll put up with the inconvenience and the risk and the gnawing uncertainty of what happens if there isn't any work. Well, there'll be work if you go find it. Doesn't matter what the field is. So, um, Julie Sue represents an aggressive attack to prevent that happening ever again. And your attorney will tell you that forever is a very long time. And I've had an attorney that told me that, and I had to think about that. They don't just mean a year or two; they mean forever. 20 glaciers, 2,000 mountain buildings, another satellite around Earth. No, longer than that. So Julie Sue is in league with the union effort. I don't know how much she's benefited from it directly, but plenty. And she is completely okay with forcing everyone in the workforce to pay a dues to the union in order to work. It's a ticket to ride, and without paying that, uh, you're not going to work. You just literally won't. And it's an example to other interests who want to imitate what the unions have done in uh, requiring you to pay them a ticket to do what you have under any constitutional rights, every right to pursue on your own.
I think where I always go to this is like, uh, at Para, we work with a lot of drivers. A lot of drivers are unhappy with how they're being treated. They're unhappy with the system and they don't think it's fair. At the same time, the vast majority of those drivers also want to continue being independent contractors. Right. I think that's sort of really when you boil it down to the sort of the crux of the problem is I think people are saying, hey, we're going to ignore the fact that most of you want this, but think it can be better. And we're going to force you to do this, even though none of you all really want that. Right. And I think really that's sort of the problem there is like both things can be true. And maybe this is like a broader thing in politics in general. I always put it as like, and you can be unhappy with this and want to be an independent contractor, right? You can say that the current system should be better. Maybe there is portable benefits. Maybe there's all of that. And you can be an independent contractor.
Yes.
Right. And I think, somehow, I mean, maybe it's all politics is always like, but it should be and. So.
Well, each one of those arguments is used by Julie Sue's allies to ad nauseum. Benefits, benefits, benefits. That's not why you go and work for yourself. That is not why you risk not having work, not having money on some days. People are in it for the upside, not to avoid downside.
Also, there's ways to get benefits that doesn't have to be paying union dues provided by the employer. Right. And I think a lot of the time when I view this as sort of the government shirking their responsibility by trying to force an old labor model upon a more modern workforce. Right. It really comes down to you can provide these things. It's all possible. It doesn't have to be done this way. Why are you forcing it to be done this way? Right. It's like it's possible. Like, it's not that hard. It's just there isn't the will to allow or will to legislate or design a system that doesn't. Right.
If you have $20,000 in the bank, you have a lot of benefits there and you get to pick and choose. I mean, you don't need maternity leave every single day. You don't need vacation time or paid sick leave or, old age or health or, you just run your business. You got 20,000 and that's great. Most Americans don't have any money at all in the bank. So, the best way to earn it is by working project work, saving some and buying the benefits like term life insurance for young householders, absolute necessity. But you don't normally get that from an employer at all. So here's a benefit, a whole benefit you actually need and don't get being a W-2 employee.
And I mean, at Para, we have W-2 employees, right? And I provide them healthcare benefits. But really what it comes down to is on average, you end up paying a couple $100 a month per person. And obviously it's more if you're married or have kids. Out of their pocket comes low hundreds. We pay mid hundreds of dollars, and that's the coverage, right? So what you're talking about is somebody needs to be able to afford hundreds of dollars a month to be able to have, and this is like a full healthcare coverage, right? But somehow we've just decided that to make it very difficult for somebody that's not full-time employed to do that.
Yes.
Right? And it just doesn't make sense to me. I also think I see two sides on the Julie Sue thing. I think not a lot of people maybe know this, but like my mother is Chinese. So I do see there's a big sort of push of people saying, hey, this is cool. We need some representation in the, we need some representation in the cabinet, basically, right? So I have seen that if you look at this letter that was signed by business leaders supporting her, there was a big wave of sort of like Asian American business leaders. And I sort of get where they're coming from. On the flip side, as a business leader, what I see is, I know I'm not a business leader, but as a business owner, what I see is, horrific mismanagement of unemployment funds and the scale of the billions, which is just crazy to me. And I think sort of zooming back, it's actually through that Steve and I met, actually, was sort of at that beginning stage of you're a gig worker, the government passed this stuff, you may or may not be covered by unemployment. Even if you are covered, each state has a different set of rules. Some states are like apply and wait. Some are apply, get rejected, and then wait. Some are apply, get rejected, and reapply. Some are don't reply at all, then reapply. And as a whole mess of a system.
And California was a disaster. I mean, this was at the same AB5's going on. It's destroying lives. And, I mean, the checks aren't getting to the right people. They're only getting to the people who were fraud.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just sort of look at that being like, it goes back to, I think maybe this earlier point is like, why is the system that way, right? And I think the system we designed was like, hey, if you answer 5 questions, we scraped all the government data and we can tell you how much each program will pay you on what timeline and how you need to apply for each of your states and when you can expect the money. And just sort of look at that as like, we shouldn't have to do that. The government should do that, or they should make it easy for you to understand how to do that, basically. But I think it goes back to that. And I think that's why, to me, how many billions were lost? Right, I forgot what it was, but like $9 billion, $7 billion, something
Way
like that.
up.
Way up.
Yeah. What is it, Mike? 45 billion?
Well, I had earlier heard 40, and then it lowered to 32 and stayed there, but that's still the equivalent of the entire California budget deficit for the coming year.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
Julie Su lost it. What do you mean you lost it? Nobody should have that kind of power. And certainly nobody with that kind of power and having done that should be considered for anything in public life. She should just go to the private sector, do what you want to do, dear, and just let this be.
and Secretary of Labor, no less.
Between 20 to 40
it's a job
billion
she's proved. She's
right?
Look, I should be better qualified because it's a job she has proven she can't do.
Yes. Well, literally, you could take almost any middle manager and say, can you do this job?
Yeah.
Or give every 30 guys a chance for a month to just see if they can clean some part of it.
I think the counter they would say is like, oh, we didn't have COBOL developers, we didn't have this, we didn't have that, the systems. And I'm like, BS, if there's a will, there's leadership, and you hire people, which the government has people, you find a way.
Right. Exactly.
Like, it's just like, this, I think in general, there's just lack of will to say, what, let's just start from scratch and let's figure it out. I'm sure we have enough people and we can do it. Right. I mean, it's,
Yep.
I just really view that sort of calculator we built. I know it's a small thing, but that took us like 3 days, right? It took 2 people 3 days, and you can do that. It's like, why can't, why is it that hard? I think that's where I always come back to, like, why do we make it so hard for people to make an informed decision, right? I mean, that was really sort of the genesis of that calculator. Just give people the facts and let them make a decision. But, we don't even give people the facts, right?
We're in the clutches of a group of people who aren't interested in doing the job as it's written in law. They're interested in doing playing their own agenda out on the tapestry of the rest of our lives. So you can't assume goodwill when you have, in a book like David Weil's book, Fisher Workplace, you literally can't assume that they're just making a mistake. Maybe it's deliberate. And in fact, in the case of Julie Su, it certainly looks like it. So that's why the House wants to see her back. We don't think we as an institution of government don't think you're fit to operate this. And if Biden does get her through, I guarantee you she's going to spend all of her time in front of Congress. Just guarantee it. So
I don't know if you see this comment up there, but Rick is a friend of ours. He's a friend of the communities, and he just moved to Colorado on the western slope from California, but he lost. He didn't get $10,000 of his unprocessed unemployment.
I see
and there's Miss Karen.
Karen Anderson says the independent state auditor's 2021 report determined Sue's fraudulent fiasco was almost 100% preventable. That's what David was saying. You don't let things like that happen. And if you find out any of it happens, you slap the whole thing and make it right. I mean, you'd be better off approving individual checks than doing it that way.
Also, if you think of 20 billion, how many people you could hire for $1 billion to make the system work, right? I know what you're saying, right? You can't counter it that way, but if you just zoom out, you're just like, $1 billion surely could have fixed this problem. Right?
At a time when all those jobs would have been very, very welcome too.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. We'll take all the freelancers and we'll break the whole thing down into 20-day parts and bid for it, like, I don't know.
So just getting back to I want to talk about this because we've been talking about the website for a while. New Jobs America. We've talked about your Be Your Own Boss bill, but I know you are talking about the recruiting a congressional sponsor. Should we talk a little bit about that?
Sure. This is a definitely a journey of exploration. There are, to my knowledge, there is only one proposal uh, being passed around in Congress from the self-employed community that reflects their wishes and their perception of what to do in the law, and that's be my own boss. It is not yet a bill. Uh, that's normal. This is called an outsider's bill. I'm comfortable with that because it's true. Uh, I've been self-employed for 40 years, and it does teach you a thing or two. And we tried to put everything I knew and everything anyone could teach me and tell me. And I've had a lot of feedback in the 12 years we've been working on the ABC test. What provisions to put into the bill that would make it attractive to self-employers, so it's not going to make things worse, makes it protects their ability to select what, when, and where they're going to work self-employed, and protects the buyer from challenges from people like Julie Sue and Jennifer Abruzzo, the head of the NLRB. And we've tried to put that in language that fits within the framework of existing labor law. All we've done is extract the people who want to be voluntarily self-employed and move them out of the fair coverage by the Fair Labor Standards Act because half of their nature is employer. And you can't divide them, so you can't regulate half of a person, so you can't regulate that person at all in this vector. So we've done that. It's written in plain English that ordinary people like me and you can read and go, oh, sure. All I have to do is choose it, and take responsibility for my actions. Great. Some people will see a relationship between that and getting a marriage license. Like, if you don't want the responsibility of marriage, don't get a license. Don't get married,
I mean, to me, it even goes as far down as a checkbook.
Right.
Don't.
If you can't do addition and subtraction, you don't want a checkbook.
Yeah, don't. It does come down to personal responsibility. If you are not responsible enough to do this, you're probably not one of the people who's approaching this the right way to be one.
Right, exactly right. It puts all the responsibility on the individual, and that's all the government should be doing. And then making sure that people honor their contracts, and then we can go to the Uber discussion. Like, one side doesn't honor their contract, that's a violation. That's what commercial law is there to repair, to readjust people's attitudes towards following the law. Okay, so there are other proposals in Congress, and I would say 3 that I know of. I just learned of another one yesterday, and that one sounds interesting, and I'm pursuing that. It's in the Senate, and I haven't even seen the language, but it's from a source that I find reliable, so worth pursuing. So what you do if you want to get a bill into Congress, you have a number of pathways, and you need to choose the one that fits you. If you are a membership organization with money coming in, you can write your own law, and then you can get all your people to back it who are members. That works. If you have no money whatsoever and you have an idea that you think works, which I would put us in that category, New Jobs America, you write it, and then you find a way to introduce it to people who find the topic appealing to them for various reasons. We've found 5 members of the House of Representatives who have extensive business experience before they came to Congress. They're very interested. They have offered us guidance as to what step to do next. And so we're following that guidance. We think it's well-deserved. We earned the right to follow their instructions. They did. So You can do that. You can go through the media, and make a. We have some very prolific communicators on our side, and there's room for people to propose other solutions or to back one. So it's you basically analyze your situation relative to the body that has to approve something, and then tune your approach and your audience support and all those different things. So it is beyond fascinating. I will tell you, if you don't mind the slow boat, you will see a lot of scenery and you will learn a lot from it. So I have nothing but good things to say about our real government, how it works. And I would like to get rid of some of the non-real government that we have to live with. So that's where it's
I always like that when we talk, you always spin that there's some good people out there, because I do have to be reminded from time to time. I really do.
Steve, this job, it pays nothing. Let's just get that out of the way. It's about the love of the work and a love of the people who benefit, even though I don't know 59,900,000 of them. It is for wonderful, earnest people, and I meet them all the time. It's like, oh, you're doing that? Oh my God, I'm so glad. And they know somebody ought to be doing this. They haven't got the time themselves. They've got family, friends, people they're giving care to. They've got neighbors, that things happen. They got responsibilities. They're working for a living, all this stuff. And they just want government to leave them alone. They follow the rules. They overpay their taxes, that sort of thing. And that's all they want. And it's really easy to serve them in that sense if you just look deeply at what you're doing.
Yeah.
Wonderful people.
So people should go to newjobsamerica.com, still be signing up.
Yes. Look at read the legislation. It's just there's a tab for legislation. You got to get beyond the kind of the display part, but it's right there. It's highlighted, the words that are going to change federal law. You highlighted. You can read them and understand them. I accept the rights and responsibilities of being my own boss. Okay, let's have it. And then you get a little 7-digit number, and that's the number you contract with. And you have the choice. You can moonlight. You can go whole hog and go solo and work on your own all the time, or you can work nights. Work sometime. Decide about it later. Permanent. It's a permanent number.
So I also want to take this moment to say that many people already know about the driver rights movement, but that's another one that, look, guys, look into both these, because driver singular, driver rights .org. Check that out. We've got over 60,000 signatures now of people wanting transparency on gig apps. That's a lot.
Yep. That means that if you can, you have to learn, you have to figure out a way to make that force apply to something in order to make work happen. So it is wonderful. For instance, there's California groups fighting the AB5 influence. I think their challenge appears to be, can you bring that to bear? They've done a very good job of making it effective. Can you keep bringing it to bear? Your people who sign these petitions, can they just send an email to their federal representative and their 2 senators? Believe me, they weigh these stuff. They know everything that comes into those offices. They try to make it seem sometimes like, it's little stuff. But in fact, if they got 20,000 emails, they go, they talk to each other. They go in their little private doors to the back end of their office, and they talk to each other. Like, holy crap! I mean, how many comments did you get about this mattress stuff? Like, I mean, it's just, there are all these clubs in government, and you just have to find the club. I mean, in the sense of a group effort, not a.
I know,
but I feel like this is a good example.
I know I've been a bit quiet here, but I've been reading the Be My Own Boss Act here on the left, which is why I've been a little.
There's a test. Okay, what do you think, David?
I'm always just a huge fan of especially the first pager, which is just like, this is what it tries to do. basically, or like let's just lay it out in human readable format. Because then I start scrambling through the bill, and I'm like, I can't do that while also participating this at the same time. So I will, you know.
Well,
My sister, who's a lawyer, probably could, but I can't.
But I mean, like after the fact, when you read it, you'll find it like kind of like the driver rights. It matches what it's saying on the page.
Yeah. At the high level, it's the same thing, right? It's like, why are people who don't have an interest in this or who it doesn't affect making the decision on behalf of the people who it affects, basically. Right?
That is not Republican government, small r. We have a republic. We elect people to do a job for us, and they need to hew to that, not just be captured by interest groups or by fads and fantasies. So yeah, but I thank you, David. That's a compliment. It was written for you, and we wrote it years ago.
And
So,
everybody else.
yeah.
But I think that even Mike, I think you should check out driverrights.org when we're done, because I think there's I don't know what it is yet, but there's something to be matched up there, maybe. Just saying, because a lot of what we want on that site is just transparency and the things they're having trouble getting their head, or the companies are getting their head around, yet they want to call us independent contractors to do so. We got to be transparent. We got to have some of these things, and that's what this is asking for.
Does Steve, have you mentioned to Mike just the Colorado bill at all, or what? What happened?
I'm not sure if Mike, are you familiar with the Colorado bill?
I am not, and we are interested in state legislation.
So it's Senate Bill SB 23098.
SB 23098.
098. It was a bill that, unlike some of these other states that want to put like a dollar amount on, like we were talking about with Minnesota before we came on, Mike, how Minnesota's like added this minimum wage, this fee, this dollar per mile, and they've like gone so exorbitant that Uber's now saying they have to double the price in Minnesota, and some areas they will be leaving. That was as of last night. They will be leaving parts of Minnesota. So and the Twin Cities will be doubled fares, everything. So my thing becomes how much work they're going to actually get. Here in Colorado, we didn't attach a number to it. It wasn't about this is how much you're going to get per mile or whatever. It just was a bill about, hey, these drivers have a right to full transparency. Where are they picking up? Where are they taking? How much are they going to be paid? Just show them that. Quit having trickery and hidden doors and stuff. Just show them what they're going to get, what they have to do, which is common in this industry anyway, and give them the right to fight a wrongful deactivation. And they were going to get it on the floor and talk about it, but before they even got to the floor, 2 Democrats jumped ship because they're in bed with DoorDash, and they decided to Kareem this thing and dissolve it.
I think what was interesting here, Mike, was it was like, the legislator, lady who wrote the bill, she was a gig worker and a gig driver. And what was interesting with the bill is that, a lot of drivers supported it. And this is where the twist is, labor also supported it, right? So it was sort of this first bill where everyone's like, what can we do to make life meaningfully better tomorrow, basically? And it's like, we can actually all agree on these things. And even in that bill, which had labor support and gig worker support and didn't argue IC versus not IC, but basically said things just need to be better. Let's just do transparency. That got killed, right? So I think that's been a bit of a lesson, at least I speak for myself, but I think Steve was always like, probably, a little more skeptical than I was one of those where you're like, wow, like this is sort of what we need more of. But yeah, it got killed before it even hit the floor.
Do you know where it got killed? What the mechanism was? I
just know it was the 2 Democrats unpledging or whatever from this thing that they had already said they're in on.
They sort of agree. I think it's a Democratic majority body. So I think, they agree on the things that are going to get passed and put it all as part of a package. So I think there was sort of like a party agreement to do this. And of course, when it came to a floor vote, suddenly, people voted against it.
The unions nationalize these initiatives like this. You have to be careful of it. You have to expect it, is that they look at any of these, what they would consider a giveaway to private enterprise, as a threat to them. Because if Colorado does it, some other state is that week going to look over their shoulder and go, "What was that language?" Yeah, and they'll put it in there. It'll appear in Tennessee or Maine or something, and they don't want that. So they don't give ground anywhere if they're from that party and support the agenda, which many are these days. So that's too bad. It sounds uh, more publicity will help the story of who did that and why, and who gives to those legislators and their shortcomings, the way Lorena Gonzalez has many, many personal shortcomings that disqualified her from uh, being a serious, assemblywoman. Uh, that you can fight this based on the personality of the individuals who are involved if you keep track. So I'm
Yeah.
much encouraged by.
It's one of the saddest parts of this story. Like he was saying that Stephanie V. Hill is her name. And she was elected to, Mike, if you kind of know Colorado, Colorado Springs is very right leaning. And she got elected in a very right leaning district, and she's not right. We've talked to her a couple times. She's a great person. She had some good ideas, but she was a gig worker elected in a very Republican area to this seat. And so she's a freshman. She has no experience with politics. And I think this was a crash course for her for sure.
I would if you think there's hope.
She had a senator sponsor. She had a co-writer that was a third year House member.
Mm-hmm. I would, if you could send some emissary to talk with her in private. One of the main questions is, did anyone threaten to retaliate against you with a primary if you voted for this gig worker provision? Because that's their first go-to line of threat, is to say, we'll primary you and you won't be a senator anymore. And that's, you think about that. We're going to force you to have 2 campaigns to get reelected. And we're going to make sure that somebody is, well financed opposing you from the beginning. So, okay, your move, what'll it be? So I would ask that question, probably in private.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Certainly.
It's weird to me that this was the only bill in the country that doesn't have a dollar tied to it. The ones with the dollar tied to it are going through.
Dollar tied into which way?
Like if they say, okay, Uber drivers, we're going to make a law. Now you get $5 per ride. You get $1.45 per mile. You get 34 cents a minute. This didn't have any of that.
You can't price set in a legislature. You're going to, just like David said.
Well, Minnesota did it on Sunday night and passed it.
Well, watch their drunk driving fatalities go up.
Yeah, because like I was saying, like when I saw those numbers, it's like, yeah, but that's active time based. Like you're not going to have as much work. Uber's going to have to charge twice as much. We were talking about this.
Yeah.
People aren't going to take Ubers if they're twice as much.
Right.
I know a lot of cities and stuff, they count on Uber. It's actually, people count on it to get to work, but people will be resilient and find other ways.
Uber is a major service provider in most non-urban main street economies. You can get anywhere you want from anywhere else for any reason at any time of day or night.
Mm-hmm.
Same with food delivery. There are so many people who don't depend upon that. You could say, oh, they're all rich. Well, they're not, So, and it helps the drivers. It's in Massachusetts. I've mentioned this to you, Steve, before. The driving for a living, no matter what flavor it is, has remade the inner city home economies, the household economy, just remade it. And it's wonderful that that's possible. It's great, but people want to price it out of existence.
Mike had an experience. Maybe he'll share it with us about Uber from yesterday. That David, maybe you'll get the. I even told him one trick not to do, because I feel like he maybe did this, but as the customer, they don't know this stuff. But you want to tell us like the distance it was and how short it was and what happened and transpired to get this Uber.
Oh, right. I was in the House office buildings. They're just south of the Capitol. They're all there. You can Google where they are. I needed to get from First, I asked to go from there to the Reagan Airport, which is just like down to the corner and across the river. It must be less than 4 miles. It might be 3. So I got a quote for 22.75. Okay, but actually, I also need to pick up my suitcase, which is northwest of there, over Independence and north on 14. Likely have to drive the 2 sides of the triangle, not the hypotenuse. So they said, "Oh, well, that's more." And we just changed surge pricing. So now the whole thing is going to be $78.80. Oh, well, that's a lot more. Of course, then you have to add a tip. And my guy was doing a great job. So I added a good tip. It was $108 to close out the ride by the time we got, through fiddling in traffic too. Oh, no, that's a ticket. That's a ride. That's a rental car, in fact. So, and I rented it for 20 minutes. So not a bad rate. I'm glad with the ride. It was a great guy. We're going to talk again. That ride's not going to get repeated. I'll buy a new suitcase. It's cheaper than paying $100 to drive around and pick it up.
Yeah.
So
and for such a short distance too.
Short distance.
I mean, I don't know. This is kind of, it makes me wonder in the normal world, who can afford this stuff? On
Right.
top of everything else I'm seeing, it's just like I see stuff and I'm like, how are people eating?
Well, there are 2 kinds of money, it appears to be in circulation. One is current money, and that's what the government has, and that's what all full-time W-2 employees get. You get new money every day. It's brand new money. And those people who are on retirement income or under long-term contracts for some reason, or just getting by and using their savings, are using that old money. But that old money is being depreciated 2 to 5% a year, maybe 10%, and that money is like shrinking. Those dollars are becoming like the size of frozen peas. Meanwhile, the prices are going up to follow the new money, which is very powerful and weak at the same time. So weak in purchasing power. So it's very divisive for the individual having to live through it.
Yeah, so I know you talked to the driver, and I see Rick asked here I think he's asking if you know how much the driver got paid.
He and I talked about that. I didn't completely understand it, but they get all of their tip or a very high percentage of the tip, but they get declining percentage for surge pricing. So obviously, my guess is, just from what he told me, the surge pricing is a way to take more from the client. So, okay, fine, I understand surge pricing. And a higher percentage of that seems to go to the platform rather than a lower percentage.
See, I'm wondering if he even sees the surge, because now in most markets, even though they're using the hourly or the minute and the mile as a tool, they are now showing what we've asked for forever. David and I have always said, hey, show us complete transparency. We'll go away. We will get out of your face. We'll leave you alone. But you gotta be transparent. But I think now they're doing that, and they're saying, hey, here's the upfront fare you always wanted to see. And so they showed him the trip, and he accepted it based on probably crappy pay, let's be honest.
Right.
And then there was an add-on to it during a surge. That's where I don't even know what to say about that, David. To me, that's where a complete manipulation. It's lucky if he got any of it. Of the surge.
You go ahead, David.
No, I didn't. I mean, I don't even know what those take rates are nowadays, right? I mean,
right. But if he's not seeing the surge and he sees an upfront fare, and then Mike adds in a stop, and it surges in between that time, and yeah, all that's just going to Uber, whereas at least some of it used to come back to the driver.
Yeah. So I think what I always say, step one, pay transparency, right? You should know what you're going to get to take the trip, but I've always said that's not enough, right? That's the most important step, but there also needs to be the clear set of rules to some extent, right? Like, I'm not saying somebody has to define the rules, but more of a, if you do this, this will happen. This is what we're going to ask you to do this, and this is just sort of how it works, right? I think it just comes back to transparency of the system. Hey, you can charge the riders a lot more as long as I know. So you can charge, just tell me, I can charge the riders whatever I want to, and I will make fully transparent offers to you. I'm like, okay, I mean, I might not like that, but at least I know that that's the case. Or, these are the set of rules. I will take this percent and this much from it. But I think where the problem is right now is this idea. I think it's opaque between all the different parties, right? So I think a lot of the time, riders and people ordering food delivery think that the driver is making a lot of money, right? And that's where a lot of the tension that we see happening in the ecosystem is people are like, I'm paying a bunch for this food to be delivered, so the driver must be making good money.
Right.
Why are you not going to ring the doorbell, wait 5 minutes, walk up the stairs, and hand it to me while I take my shower, right?
I got the clue that I would have if I were to send this over to the Uber management cloud is just from a Cub consultant many moons ago. We did a project on driver programs for a large, well-known moving company. They were having a terrible time retaining drivers. Sound familiar? And they were trying to come up with overall platforms. And what we discovered very quickly was that the drivers were very non-uniform in what they wanted. We wound up proposing 6 different segments. Some actually didn't care about more pay, they wanted more respect. So, okay, you can give people respect and mean it. You can't move without people. Some people just wanted revenue and they couldn't care about the conditions all that much. Some people wanted home time. Some guys were single; they didn't mind being out on the road a lot. Some guys just wanted to choose their loads, much like today. Like they just don't want to go to Utah from South Carolina, but they're happy to go to Chicago, so they wanted a choice. And if you simply come up with look at the segments of what the drivers want. Uber could do this. They have all the money they want. They could come up with a program and then they could offer a plan, and a guy could switch plans, but the plan's going to stay the same, so that Uber can honor the expectations. Because if you go on for 10 years like this, everyone will say, "Oh, I've tried that. Doesn't work." And then the company is really hurting, and so are the customers. So that's not Pollyanna-ish. It's just like, try it, guys. So
Yeah,
you're welcome. Take a shot at that. Just segment your driver base.
Yeah, I feel like there's lots of different things occurring in that space, and that's a whole nother conversation with all these states going different directions on how to treat Uber. And Uber's main goal is to keep us independent contractors, realizing too that most of us want to be, because we love the flex time, the ability to work, and we all the things that come with it. But it's like I've said this before. David said this before. It's like they want to pay us like independent contractors, but treat us like employees.
Yes, they want control without responsibility.
Yeah. And so as we wind it down, we have about 7 minutes left. Mike, what's the last thing that we should hit on today? Because there's a couple here, like the legislation to protect us all. I hate the word legislation, so when you put that out there, I loved that.
Well, I think this is a time where the voice of the individual can be heard more clearly than usual, because these are very tense times with a lot of pressure in them, and everybody feels it. Doesn't matter how you work or whether you work. Everybody feels it. And at moments like this, the legislature listens more than normal. And they may pretend they don't, but for instance, we have Elizabeth Warren, who is not a friend of independent contracting. She's one of our senators, and her overall, though she's Democratic, this is a very Democratic voting state, her approval rating is not very good. So Elizabeth Warren, somewhere in her personality, is listening. And so even in Massachusetts, we should email Elizabeth Warren about what we want. And I think all the senators and all the representatives are more accessible than normal. So if we could get some citizen involvement and engagement, I think we'd be better off.
I think just
So
I second that's like authentic letters, right? I think what we've seen, and we've been guilty of this with that. There's so many software here, like click here to email your representative, and if there's a tidal wave of that, maybe it makes a difference. But I do think at the end of the day, maybe I'm an optimist, and it sounds like you're an optimist too, Mike. Is like write your thoughts, send it, and that's the best way. Write it authentically and mail it, maybe certified mail it, and that.
It's okay. It's okay. I think they weigh them, David, rather than reading them. That's so. Write something, but don't worry if it just says, "I'm a gig worker. I want freedom, and I need that freedom to do that without harassment, and just let it go at that." I admire your writing urge, but it's getting your name and address in their district into their office on this issue. That is what's going to get measured.
yeah. So people need to go to New Jobs America. They need to. You guys, this is why I'm using this opportunity to bring up driver rights too, because we were at 60,000 signatures a while back. So
Wow.
now I'm using it to hit both these platforms, because you should go check out New Jobs America, and you should read the Be My Own Boss legislation, or the bill that Mike's trying to get moving along here. And you should also go to driverrights.org and make sure that you have signed up there, because I believe we get their address too and stuff, don't we, David?
We do. You can enter it, and we can help you contact your local politician.
Right, but I mean, like, for the people that have entered info, like,
Yes.
do we have the info that he's talking about having an address? I'm imagining we do, right?
We sort of. It's like an optional field, basically, that people.
But we have the email, and we could say,
Yep.
I mean, maybe I don't know how you propose that or what you do, but
Is it, David? Is it if they know you live in Maine? Does Senator Collins get a copy?
Yeah, so I think there's another part of the system. So the change.org is just a way for people to show support of it. We also have another landing page where you can click, and it will email your senator, your congressman, local politicians, etc.
Great. Do both.
Yeah.
well, see, and that's what he was saying. He didn't know, and that's what I was trying to get your take on, Mike, too, is that he didn't know, like, how much weight did something like that have? Because it was made to be very easy for people to just go in and click, yes, email all these people, and it was almost just like type your name, put your email, and here it's pre-written.
They talk about this. They talk about it in the office. Their staff will tell them. There are people that monitor the accounts, not in every single office, but many of them are surprisingly responsive online. So they will not necessarily read every letter to the representative. That's not going to happen. But they will say, we got 20,000 this week on, offshore wind or something like that. And people, oh, okay. So the word gets to them. You don't have to write them just once. You don't have a budget. You can email a couple of times. It's free.
Mm-hmm.
Be free about it. Just tell them.
I think Bud Soda and Steel in Tennessee had sort of or Steel in TN had a good some comments here, which I thought were interesting. So I think Steel in, I've contacted them many times. My representatives sure don't give a damn.
Sure.
And then Bud Soda, been there, done that. Stefanik on the House is the only one who cares about independent contractors, mostly because of truckers. Schumer and Gillibrand don't care. I think the second one here, though, you can sway your individual House members more easily. All right, so I think the answer is, hit it all, hit it again. I know it's frustrating, but that's, when we talk about sort of like having rules to the system, politicians, this is the system they care about, right? So you just got to hit them how they want to see it.
So I have to go to this about. So this is Sean, and he lives outside Nashville. Okay, I happen to know Sean. So he's contacted him many times. They don't give a damn. Is this one of those things, Mike, where he's just not hearing back from them, but they're still reading it, right? I mean, is that what you're kind of getting at?
Is he just measuring what they send back?
I have no idea.
Okay, I would ask Sean. just think about the process you used and
He
what
said if you send them something about the border, they pounce all over it.
meaning they agree with
Anything else is crickets, he says. I don't know.
where does he live in? What's the capital of Tennessee? Pardon me, Nashville?
Um, is it Memphis or
I don't think so. I think it's
is it
Nashville.
Nashville?
Oh
Or
boy,
is
are
it?
we ignorant? Okay.
I know. Now you got me. Like I actually, this is something I kind of do well with too. Knoxville. I don't know.
Well,
I feel like it's not Nashville for some reason,
call
but it
the
probably is. Yeah.
call
Anyway,
the office and say, "This is Sean, and I'm trying to get the word to you that I'm an independent contractor, and tell them your occupation. And will you please do something for me on this issue? You know, like, did you vote? I voted for it. Just something on the phone. Do something. Remember, this is forever. If they pass these laws, you will not in your lifetime unpass them. No, you have to get there now. There isn't any procrastination on politics these days. Pardon the consonants. You've got to do it now. Look what we're
yeah.
doing with Julie Sue. It's
Shane,
now.
I see that you're saying same thing here in Colorado. So I'm in Colorado.
Our advisors say it's Nashville, but so does it's Albany. That must mean New York.
He's talking about New York, yeah.
Yes. Pardon me.
But Shane says he's in Colorado and he he's written the governor a few times. So I don't know if you caught the beginning of this, Shane, but we were actually talking about the Senate bill that got dropped that actually should have got through. I don't know if you heard whim of that, but if you do DoorDash, you definitely did. If you do DoorDash in Colorado, you got approached by DoorDash saying, you got an email saying that they're trying to take away your independent contractor rights. Click here. And it did not provide you a link to the bill. You were not allowed to read the bill. You just had to take DoorDash's word at it.
You wonder who advises their, political people.
I mean, it's what they do. It's what
Yeah.
they do. They use measures like that. And so again, I think it's more of a hybrid. I always have to do this. It's more of a hybrid independent contractorship, these apps, than traditional independent contractorships. Because traditional, you just kick them out the door. I mean, this wouldn't even exist. They just kept coming at you and saying, "You want to do this for $1?" You'd be like, "No, get out of here."
Yeah.
So
The apps are evolving. Google wants to know every time I open up one of our financial accounts, can I do the password for you? Can I please? And no, not ever, it's okay. And then the next time I go, it's no, not ever. Later that afternoon, like they don't care. They're just going to come back at you. Like, grow up, guys. Serve me. I'm the customer.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to wrap it up for the day. I want to thank Mike and I want to thank David both for being here. I know we did this live, but this is going to disappear. So all you people were lucky, but it will re-premiere on the Para channel on Thursday. So
excellent. Thank you, David.
Mike, good to meet you in person.
So yeah, you guys check out each other's stuff. I know, David, you already were, but Mike, you should check out driverrights.org.
I will do that. And thank you for your work, David.
Awesome. No, thank you too.
So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you back here soon. Have a good week.
Steve. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.